Here I am in downtown Ann Arbor on East Washington Street in front of Third Mind Bookstore, a bookshop that specializes in all things Beat Generation. Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, William S. Burroughs, anything Beat, these guys know what's up. In just a moment, I'm going to talk to the owner and curator, Arthur Nusbaum. We're going to talk all things Beat literature, and stick around to the end. Drop your name in the hat for that giveaway. See you in there. Here we are with the owner and mastermind, can I call you the mastermind, of Third Mind Books, Arthur Nusbaum, and Vice President Joe Provenzano. Gentlemen, how you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Arthur, can you please give me a little background on just how it all began here with Third Mind Books and your passion for Beat literature?
Well, my passion for Beat literature, and especially William S. Burroughs, okay, the grandfather of all Beatdom and beyond, began many years ago, and gradually developed over the years, and for many years I was a big reader, collector, occasional writer, hobnobber, finally culminating in meeting the great man himself, almost to the day 30 years ago, in February of 1995, in the sunset of his life at his home in Lawrence, Kansas. So after many years of that, I finally broke on through to the other side, as the Doors on one of our psychedelic posters would say. Yeah. First online, beginning around 2010, created Third Mind Books online at the time. And then in June of 2022, just 2.5 years ago, going on 3 years ago now, we opened this emporium, okay, which is, it's part store, part museum, you might say. It's also a venue. Behind me is our stage, where we have monthly open mic events that have become very popular. We've had many book launches and other miscellaneous presentations. We had John Sinclair, the famous, now deceased recently, legend of the counterculture here. That was something, wasn't it, Joe? Yes, it was. Yes. And we're having a lot of fun. We've become, it's really, beginning to take on a life of its own almost. We are magnets for sources of the most interesting and collectible items. The core, of course, is the Beat Generation and William S. Burroughs, but our motto is Beat and Beyond. 20th century countercultural, or even mainstream, collectible mid-century literature and ephemera. We have many broadsides, posters, even original documents, all sorts of what we call ephemera here, in addition to your chapbooks and volumes and what have you. And the majority of what you see here is curated, both on the site and here. Explain
a little bit about what you mean by that.
Yeah, what we do is we on the site and on a card here, we're going to show you. We completely describe and curate the item, and if a bibliography is relevant, we'll refer to that. and the condition of it is in great detail given.
We really tell you everything you need to know about an item, save reading it yourself. And that is a huge point of pride for ourselves. You know, there's no AI used ever here. We write these curations. You know, it's like almost like a little museum placard each time. So that, along with the stuff Arthur was describing, the condition grading, which Arthur has patented really himself, a very specific, almost microscopic version of how to describe these things. We've really created a language onto ourselves with this stuff, and that is a huge point of pride for us, and what our customers internationally have come to really love as well.
Indeed, indeed. So, you know, make a long story short, we have this ongoing process of curations, and every week we introduce 25 newly curated, newly minted curations onto our site and our front window. Okay, a customer has arrived. So, we do that every week, and you know, hundreds and thousands have accumulated by now. You know, and so this is much more than your average bookstore, if I may say so myself. I mean, it's almost like an institute. And we are, by the way, we're international scholars and writers and publishers too. We've published volumes. We've made presentations of, in my case, of course, about William S. Burroughs all the time.
We're affiliated with an organization called the European Beat Studies Network. And the European Beat Studies Network has conferences every year. Save the COVID years, there was some interruption, but every year they geographically rotate. We did a presentation. The last one we did was in Paris on Burroughs, and it's a really great consortium of individuals who are all uniquely and equally dedicated to preserving the Beat legacy and to creating new discoveries, really new ideas about how we can look at Beat literature and why it's still relevant today, which I know is you know, part of the things you'd like to talk about as well.
Absolutely.
Yes. What was I saying?
I don't remember you. Talking about
Yeah.
this.
Oh, yes. So in addition to the weekly introduction of new arrivals on the site and at the store, we have our monthly themed specials. It might be about beat history, a particular beat because it's the birthday month of that person or something like that. And that is where we discount a whole batch of items for that month and display some of them on this table over here, you know, and there's much more where that came from. And then we have all of our events, you know, and we've recently become affiliated, by the way, with the Ann Arbor Film Festival, which is a venerable event. And we're going to have in the future various related presentations of films here.
Co-sponsored events that we're going to do, you know, showings here of, and we've had one such event before, and it was really, really successful. The short films of a guy named Jack Cronin, very well attended, and we love the people at the film festival. They're so wonderful, and so it's really exciting and great that we'll be collaborating with them more. And then also we have a music performance here happening, and Anne Erlewine, the famous, you know, Erlewine family of folk-related Ann Arborites. You know, her father, Michael Erlewine, founder of AllMusic.com and everything, was also huge in the folk scene and in Ann Arbor. He knew Joan Baez and Bob Dylan, for example. So we're really excited to have that be further incorporated as well into our vision for what we do here.
So you touched on William S. Burroughs as kind of starting, I guess, your journey into beat literature. Can you explain a little more about how your meeting with him came about and just how that went? Because I'm sure that's probably an interesting experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to also add, too, to just kind of circle back to the thing before. You discovered Burroughs for real in college, right?
Yes.
And so you didn't really mention that. So you might want to, you know, give a little more preface about your journey with WSB as well.
Yeah. In my college days, I had a professor, Herbert C. Burroughs Jr. Okay, he was a real, they don't make him like that anymore, a fantastic professor's professor, a blue blood. You know, he had a Mr. Thurston Howell type accent, you know, and everything like that. And anyway, it turns out, just coincidentally, that he was almost precisely the same age and had attended Harvard with William S. Burroughs. Okay. And, you know, I was just beginning my interest in Burroughs at that time, you know, and he kind of teased me about it because he said, well, we just didn't like each other, you know, and you know, he would occasionally run into Burroughs at the airport or something like that, you know, you know, but it, you know, even though he was not a fan of Burroughs, it somehow planted the seed, and that there was something, you know, and anyway, in 1995, many years later, okay, you're asking me about the visit.
Yes.
You know, at that time, I was married and about to become a father for the first time, and in fact, this was in February 1995. Within a month and a half of that journey, I became a father. Yeah. You know, the first of my two children. And anyway, so you know, while the going was good, you know, and by that time I was really interested and had been reading everything and writing and hobnobbing, you know, really seriously about Burroughs. It had really ripened into something, you know, more than just a casual interest, but not yet a career either, you know, whatever kind of thing. So
you were doing independent scholarship as well, though, because you'd written your piece on Beyond the Road by then, right?
That's right. Yeah. Which he
has a densely footnoted article that's really interesting.
And which is available here. It was published as a chapbook by our British friend Kevin Ring of the Beat Scene Press, which is very good. And my visit itself, by the way, I wrote an essay about my visit, and it was published in several obscure publications that you can buy here. And it's also on our, yes, it's called Back at the Pond. And when you read the essay, you'll understand what that's all about.
That's sitting on the shelf there. I think I bought it.
Oh, that's right. I think I autographed that for you. That's right. Sure he did. That's right. Anyway, so I started. I tried to kind of legitimately through his organization. You know, there was a thing called Burroughs Communications in Lawrence, you know, which was run by his chargé d'affaires, who is now his successor, basically, like the keeper of his legacy over there, Mr. James Greerholz. Okay. And some of the people who had written about him, you know, some of the critical biographers, you know, I tried legitimate, and I was, you know, I was sort of ignored or blown off or whatever you want to call it. But I just decided the hell with it. You know, I was so scholarly by then that I knew exactly where to look for his house and what street it was on and so on. And a certain sidekick, shall we say, you know, went with me, you know, who's also was very learned about Burroughs, you know, just to accompany me. So we flew to Lawrence without an invitation or anything. And, you know, I was taking a chance, to be sure, you know, I mean, you know, with his reputation and all that. So on February 18th, 1995, we approached his home and knocked on his door at a certain hour that I was fairly certain would be between things, you know, where he'd be by himself, so that his henchmen would not, you know, shoo us away or whatever, you know, and his little mafia that he had, you know, whatever.
And what I have to remember too, in the landscape of the 90s, you know, Burroughs in particular is experiencing a little bit of a renaissance. You know, people like Nirvana are being public about their love for Burroughs. So you got all these kids from Lawrence, which is actually kind of a hip town, that are just coming up to his door and trying to knock and always being shooed away. Sure. So that's the landscape behind Arthur's comments there.
Excellent. Right. What time of the day was that?
It was in the late afternoon, approximately 4 p.m. if I'm not mistaken, three or four. Right. You know, and I knew it would be before his first drink and his joint or whatever, whatever.
Vodka and Coke.
Yes, and it was and we bore a gift, actually, a fine whiskey that I knew was one of his favorites, and
so scholarship even went into these decisions, as you can see,
Right.
What kind of whiskey?
Macallan's. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's all in the story,
Yeah, that is.
I wrote it down immediately, anyway. In fact, we were supposedly recording it, but it got bungled. The technology of the time, cassette technology, it was bungled.
Yeah.
But I immediately, wrote it all down so that it's as if, and there's a famous photograph of us together too that testifies to this greatness. Anyway, so we were, I took the brave lead, my friend was behind me cowering, whatever. And we knocked on his door and I see, like that shower scene in a certain movie, the opaque shadow of somebody, coming to the front door. And there he was, the great William S. Burroughs. And, I wasn't sure. I thought I might be facing the barrel of a shotgun, or something like that.
He did like guns.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, as we found out. But anyway, here he was in sort of like army surplus-ish outfit, like with a jacket and jeans, very casual. And
about how old was he?
oh, he was 81.
Okay.
He had just turned 81 on the 5th of February, 1995. This was February 18th. So it was meant to be almost like a belated birthday gift, except I was too nervous to even mention it. So he and he knew we were arriving by then because we had seen certain people, like one of his shooting associates who's a sculptor and a bartender person. And I think they said, Bill, I think somebody's coming and they're cool, or something like that. I have a feeling that was the case because he was right from the get-go, ultra gracious. And the story will give you all the details, down to the minute, and we sat down for the better part of an hour with the great man. I sat on his couch, his cats started to get on my lap. And he showed us all around, including the outside and a pond, which at the time was frozen over pretty much still. And he was explaining like the hibernation habits of fish or something, they're in a stasis, or something like that. And he showed us the graves of his other cats and we talked about many things, it's all in the story, Jack Kerouac and him. And at one point, I think he was practicing for a reading he was going to do in the next day or something like that. But he also had the second volume of a major biography that I noticed of Graham Greene, the great author Graham Greene. Okay. Yeah, he wrote The Power and the Glory, and stuff like that. He was a very good, I recommend him, prolific author. And he pointed to it. He says, yes, this is the second volume, and I said, yeah, I remember reading The Power and the Glory when I was in high school or something like that, and he said, read it again. I said, yes, sir. And at one point, there were many of his artworks in his little house there. And one of them was like a part painting, part collage with a little photograph of the playwright Samuel Beckett in the middle. And I remembered, that, that Beckett was a fan of Burroughs and had complimented him. And in his spare manner, all he said was, yes, he's a writer, And I referred Burroughs to that anecdote, and he, like, in a stern paternal manner, he says, he said that about me. And I said, okay,
And
whatever. I wasn't going to argue with the man, whatever.
a little background too about Arthur was saying as well, Beckett and Burroughs kind of mutual admiration society between them, and Burroughs' admiration for Graham Greene as well. So these are Arthur's pointing out things that he knows Burroughs is going to also kind of share his enthusiasm for, and that's part of the landscape of what's happening.
In fact, you know, yeah, and at the very beginning of the visit, just as I was entering, he began to warm up to me when I don't remember now exactly how it came about, but I knew the name of his parents' gift shop in Florida. Okay, Cobblestone Gardens, and to be exact. And he says, "Yes, you're right." You know, and he knew at that point, like, this is not just some, you know, hippie dilettante, you know, going in there wants to smoke a joint with me or, you know, whatever. Although I wouldn't have minded, you know. But anyway, so it was just a magical visit. And, you know, even his appearance, it's hard to describe. He was like almost ethereal or something. You know, he, you know, but he was very lucid and a very firm handshake, you know, but by then he was a very old and, you know, after the life he had led, you know, very sepulchral kind of, you know, figure. And in fact, he would sit in a wheelchair. He wasn't wheelchair bound, but when he sat down, it was in a wheelchair, you know, but he was physically and mentally quite sharp, you know, but pretty shriveled by that time, you know, whatever, you know, and anyway, it was a magical visit that you know, that I'll never forget, and that I wrote extensively about. You can read the story, and we were lucky, you know, because I would say 2.5 years later, he passed away, you know, and that was my big chance, you know, and I went for it, and I've been parlaying it ever since, you know.
Arthur, thanks for sharing that story. I will definitely have to check out the article. One question I have for you, because you collected books for a long time before opening the bookstore, and you were selling online.
Yes.
When you were doing this and collecting these books and selling them online, was it always in the back of your mind to open up a brick and mortar bookshop, or was that something just kind of came about later on?
Well, first of all, my own legendary collection, which is, you know, at an undisclosed location, is not part of this. Okay. And it was not collected with the intention of opening the site and selling it all. Someday, perhaps it will be available, you know, after I'm gone and I won't care anymore, you know, whatever. But anyway, when I first started it online, I didn't initially, I mean, you know, I thought vaguely maybe in the distant future, perhaps it would be a brick and mortar, but I took it a step at a time, you know, but then it just reached a point after Joe came along, you know, he helped me understand, you know, that it had reached a ripening point where this is what we needed to do. And I think he's been proven correct, although, you know, it doesn't grow on a tree. We're working very hard and we aren't there yet, but we're, you know, getting there. So come on, folks, you know, help us out here.
So Joe, you've been working for Arthur for a few years now.
Oh, for a long time.
Before the start of the book.
Yes. I mean, when did I start working for you? Was it like
about 10 years ago?
Yeah.
When we were at the time, you know, it was only online, but we had a headquarters at you know, that building on Packard and Woodlawn. It's with dentists. You know, it's all the dentist building. I was the only non-dentist tenant in there. And my landlord was a dentist, you know, whatever.
With the tooth sculpture in front?
No.
Like the more just kind of basic office building look.
Yeah, it's a regular old office building. Yeah. Actually, it's I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's the first building ever built by Hobbs and Black, you know, architects here. And anyway, so I had a headquarters, and that's where we stored everything and shipped everything and did everything. And that's where Joe first was. You know, we evolved our systems and everything, and then it took a big turn with this, you know, and exponentially everything about it. And you know what's interesting, you know, at the beginning, like during the online years or the first online years or whatever, you know, I chased after, you know, my initial inventory was from a mentor bookseller whom I had bought for myself a lot of, and I bought in bulk my entire initial inventory from him, but you know, it gradually transitioned from me chasing down to being chased, which is a good problem to have, you know, and we're very blessed with some of the greatest sources, including the very people themselves, you know, that we are peddling or whatever, or people who are closely related to them and whatever, you know.
In a professional and also sometimes filial way, like, you know, the sons and daughters of these various individuals who are affiliated with the Beat Generation, and or individuals who were mentored by or, you know, had very close, you know, publishing relations with the main figures of the Beat Generation and beyond, and all the various incarnations that come down after that, you know, because there's all these, you know, the influence of the Beats, once they do that cardinal emergence in like 56 really with Howl and everything, that's just the start of an explosion that goes for a long time. And you have this mentorship lineage that keeps going and going. And, you know, you have these people, like one of our big collections that we have is from a guy named Thomas Rain Crow. And there's this thing called the Second San Francisco Renaissance. That's a exact example of what I'm talking about right now, where you have a new generation of young people at the time who were in their early 20s, post the, you know, psychedelic revolution of the 1960s, who are coming of age. And, you know, this is past the, you know, Life magazine heyday of the 50s and everything. And the major figures of the Beat Generation who are still alive are just regular people again. So Thomas Rain Crow and Neely Tchaikovsky and a group of like-minded individuals just started knocking on doors and saying, hey, can we learn from you? So, like, you know, fast forward 50 years, you know, we get in contact with Thomas Rain Crow, or he gets in contact with us, and we get his archive. You know, so that's the kind of thing we're talking about here.
Yeah, and when it's relevant, we will make that part of our curations, you know, from the collection of, and then give a, you know, capsule bios and significances and associations and whatever, and it just keeps coming, and you know, if we never got a single new curatable item, it would take us years to for what we have already. And we've become very good also at honing in on larger lots of relevant items at auctions, because you have to take into account a lot of you know, the premium and the shipping and everything like that. So, but when it's a lot of items, you know, you can sometimes, and we've gotten some wonderful things. It's, you know, our karma is really good when it comes to all of this. And another example, you know, over in that thing over there, is from one source we obtained most of the either Family Dog or Bill Graham 1960s psychedelic San Francisco music concert posters, the famous ones, the original ones, you know, from one source, a gentleman whose autobiography called Tempest Fugitive, his name is Dion Wright, is over here. You know, you can buy a signed edition, by the way.
What's the average retail on those concert posters?
Well,
it's hard to make an average, actually. Some are like $2,000 and some are $100.
Yeah, I mean, yes, they range from 100 to the thousands. And there's a very special, almost Talmudic scholarship. One scholar in particular, a gentleman named King. Okay, he wrote a door stopper guide. Okay, and we refer to it like a Bible in all of our curations of these items.
So it's like the guide to concert posters.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, the difference between a first and second printing can be like so minute. I mean, some minute factor that you would never imagine, and you have to. But we pride ourselves like on this kind of scholarship, and it makes the difference between like 200 and 2,000.
You want to direct them to the Pawn Stars episode?
Yeah, we went to. Joe and I went to Detroit and were featured in a Pawn Stars episode. I think it was
on History Channel, of course.
yes, it was called Motor City Wheeling and Dealing or something like that.
And there's
yeah.
in my section of it, I saw a concert poster. So if you get to see kind of exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's on the Third Mind Books YouTube channel. So check it out, folks.
yeah. And I sold a volume, and it was a very, very interesting experience, you know.
Awesome. I'll look up that link and drop in the comments if you guys want to check it out. One question I have for you, do you have, I know it's probably hard to pinpoint one item, but can you talk about maybe just one item that you feel is extra special in the store?
Well,
if you can pick one, if one comes to mind.
Yeah. Can I move around, or you know, there is no one item. There's so much that I wouldn't know where to begin. But let's look at a few items right in here, okay, that are of great significance. Here is the very first printing, first edition of On the Road. You know, it's an iconic item, okay, by Jack Kerouac, of course. All right, and somewhat below and to the right of that is the first publication ever of William S. Burroughs under the pen name of William Lee. In 1953, it is a garish covered pulp paperback, which is, you know, reversed with another book on the other side. And it was the first version of Junkie, which has since been republished and with scholarship or whatever, many editions. This was an ace paperback, hardly noticed by you know, critics at the time, but it began the cult that we know today or whatever. And it's considered, it's one of the, I have one myself, of course, you know, somewhere. And this is a fine specimen of it. And you know, no core devotee of Burroughs can be without it, is all I can say. You know, it is the cornerstone of any Burroughs collection.
Out of curiosity, what do the On the Road and Junkie sell for?
Well, On the Road, we're offering for $4,000, which may seem like a lot, but is actually, I mean, I've seen many copies in no better condition than that, or anything for $10,000. Okay, so that's a bargain. This one is going for $950, and that too is a relative bargain because it can go for $1,000 or more. But we just, you know, we always try to be somewhat competitive or you know, that in the ballpark or whatever. And everything in this case is of great importance. Here, for example, is the very first printing of Zap Comic Books #1, which is all Robert Crumb, and we have an extensive curation about that to justify the extremely high price that we're asking for it. You know, oh, is it 6? Oh, okay, because it's behind here. You know, just so you know that you can distinguish this because on the back cover it says printed by Charles Plymell, who's a friend of ours, who's a beat and beyond character, a literary outlaw, as it were. You know, that distinguishes it. And you know, the condition of these things, there's a Bible for that, okay, and an organization even that if you pay them some bucks, they'll grade it precisely and then seal it forever, you know, so you never can, you know, touch it again or something like that. We did not do that, but we think it's at least of, I mean, they're so strict that, I mean, if there's the slightest thing, then it goes down or whatever. But this is at least what would be considered a respectable mid to high grade by these people. You know, I forget what, GED or something. Yeah, you know. So there's some examples of you know, of things. And you know, our motto is Beat and Beyond. It's not just Burroughs and the Beats. Here's an E. Cummings first edition, Thomas Wolfe, Lynn Ward, who was the pioneering, you know, like graphic novel artist, you know, a novel in pictures. You know, there's a lot of those now. It's a whole category, but this, you know, he was the first person, I think, to do that. And it just goes on, you know. I think you get the idea, you know. Yeah. Oh, should we show him the McNeil?
Arthur, thank you for showing us around.
You're welcome.
So we have today a special item that we're going to do a giveaway. So if you're interested in dropping your name in the hat for a chance to win this item right here, comment with the word Ferlinghetti, and I'll drop your name in the hat, put you in the raffle for the giveaway. Arthur, can you please give a little background about this item?
I'm going to defer to Joe for that because he is our Ferlinghetti expert.
That's wonderful. You mind holding it for me while I do this here?
Certainly.
So in 1953, Ferlinghetti buys, or really starts with a guy named Peter Martin, what City Lights Books, okay? And it's initially just, you know, a all paperback bookstore, okay? So 53, he starts this with Peter Martin. And 55, he starts it as a publishing company. Pictures of the Gone World is the first book in what becomes the City Lights Pocket Poets series, okay? And this is the series that publishes Howl and Other Poems as its, I believe, 4th volume. And Howl, of course, is this huge, important thing for, you know, freedom of speech, free expression in this country, you know, gay literature, you know, it's this huge breakthrough. But this is the very first book that's published in this series that ends up being this absolutely breakthrough thing for American literature. And so this, as kind of an originary source document for the Beat movement at large, is really, really important. And this copy is signed by Ferlinghetti, and it's the 60th anniversary. And, you know, Ferlinghetti is one of these poets who is hard to hate. You know, you maybe not like it, but he's so charming. You know, the verse is so charming, and he's just so easy to read. And that's the French thing, the connection I was getting, the surrealist aspect. Okay, so Ferlinghetti brings this with him his whole life. I believe there's a quote in there. He calls a poem a strange mirror walking down a street or something like that. It's quoted in the curation. There's this beautiful inventiveness that we associate with the surrealists, the sort of, you know, the clouds have trousers, you know, kind of element, you know, that really just pops from this book. So its relation to the Beats as a kind of aspirational endeavor towards literary achievement, you know, and the ambition that we associate with the project, and the other core essences as well, like, you know, what it means to do this, what it means to be a poet, like what is the role of the poet in society? These are all questions that end up really occupying the Beats, and Ferlinghetti especially. So it's very representative to the legacy and life of the Beat generation in many ways.
And I should note that this is not the first edition, okay? This is the 60th anniversary edition. I guess it came out in
It must have been
2015.
Yes, 2015.
Yeah. And it is signed by Ferlinghetti.
Is he still alive?
No, he died in 2021 at the age of 101. Which for a Beat, or in his case, Beat enabling adjacent, whatever figure, is astonishing. Astonishing. I mean, it would be for anybody, I suppose, but for him, astonishing. Yeah, he lived to be 101, and I can assure you that's far above the median for Beat generation figures. You know.
Yeah.
Yes.
He called himself a bohemian from an earlier generation. He called it, you know, wine sipping bohemian. So, you know, he didn't engage in some of the extracurricular pursuits that some of these guys did.
And it's been curated also by us, with what we have explained to you, with all our scholarship.
Yes.
And there it is.
So yeah, for a chance to win that signed copy by Ferlinghetti called Pictures of the Gone World, just drop the comment with the name Ferlinghetti for a chance to win. Gentlemen, Arthur, Joe, thank you very much for your time today. Love hearing the stories. Anything else you want to end on? Future of Third Mind Books, what do you got planned?
Well, more and more events, more and more curated collectibles and in-print items that we select carefully to offer. And onward.
I can add some things here.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we just want to be a nexus for literary community and literary activity, creative activity of all sorts, really, in the city of Ann Arbor and, you know, further afield. It's very important to have that sense of culture building, of community building. It was a huge part of the Beat generation, and it's a huge part of how we want to carry it into the future. You know, it's kind of, we want to have that kind of ambassadorial spirit of the Beat generation and what it means to kind of have what I like to call revolutionary fun, because that's something that gets forgotten about, how much fun these people had, and why that's so important, why community is so important and everything. So Third Mind Books, we intend on being a nexus for that sort of activity. So come on down.
Yes, indeed. And riffing on what you just said or whatever, locality. Okay, the focus on locality is a very important concept to us. Charles Olson, our favorite obscure beat-related poet, Charles Olson, okay, Maximus, we call him, whatever. He had a laser focus, an archaeological focus on his locality, which in his case was Gloucester, Massachusetts, okay? And we have that level of focus on Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor is it's the locality is very important to us, and to be a part of this particular community, to go down in history, hopefully, as a venerable aspect of the community.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for all things Beat Generation and beyond. Please come visit Third Mind Books. See ya.